It's my great pleasure to welcome Kaushik Basu to the Ideas for India Conversation series. This is the second of these, and we kind of hope to use this platform to just have deep, engaged discussions. I mean, in a world of soundbite journalism and gotcha, big fight TV studio dynamics, there really is, I think, a missing market here for deep, engaged discussion of ideas. And I'm particularly delighted to have Professor Basu here, given his both academic and policy credentials, having been on both sides of this divide. So Kaushik, let's just get started with, I think, a big picture question, which is the chief economist of the World Bank is probably the most prominent position from which to set a global agenda for both research and practice in growth and development. What would you characterize as your main intellectual and policy thrusts in this role since the time you've taken over in the past 15 months?
Karthik, before getting to that, let me just thank Ideas for India for doing this. And what you said in the beginning, we get a lot of economic discussion, which is little sound bites for the next morning's interest. But you miss out on some of the larger questions, which do need to be debated, and the long run benefits or even the downside can be huge of doing these things wrong. So having a forum where you allow for questions which may not quite be of interest for the next morning's headlines, but of interest to the subject is very welcome. With that, let me go to your first question. Yes, I mean, it is, I have to say, it's a forum, being chief economist of the World Bank, which I feel blessed because it does give you an opportunity for engagement with the subject, with the policy end of development economics in quite an amazing way. I mean, the reach of the global engagement is large. And for me, especially, this was of a great opportunity because I've done my life in research and teaching. Before this, of course, I had my India experience, which was a hands-on experience, and then this. There are ideas, lots of important ideas to be brought to the table. First of all, I must point out that something which is a bit to do with the profession itself, the profession of economics, which to me is heartening and which makes a segue into development economics, which I'm able to steer it a little bit, give it a nudge using my position at the World Bank. You know, one important change in the economics profession is some of the extreme thinkings which were ideologically rooted without having enough grounds have become very weak. If you look at the sort of good economists, I would say the top end of it, 90-95% will be broadly sharing a lot of common ideas, which was never the case earlier. The extreme right and the extreme left fringe have somehow fallen off. And that's very important because there are two important recognitions which have come. That first of all, leaving it all to the free market, just let it run free for itself, does not work. Or even if it works, it can lead to such gross inequalities that it's going to put ordinary life in peril. The political stability is going to go. On the other hand, the belief on the other side that you can bring in the state and the state takes over and does it all has also gone out because you realize that the market, individual enterprise, creativity, these things are very powerful forces. And so this coming together of this with the edges becoming unimportant is very important for the profession itself. And I was very keen when I took up the job in the World Bank to have development economics reflect this. And this was happening on its own. I don't want to exaggerate what I've been doing, but to bring that to the table. There are a couple of other directions in which I wanted to give a push, and I think I've given a gentle push. Poverty eradication, those policies the World Bank has for long been engaged in. But to go beyond that and say that, look, it's not just poverty eradication, but there is something in terms of sharing the pie, which is important in life. We took it upon ourselves, and the World Bank wrote down two goals, which were actually only last year in April, formally brought in as World Bank's goals, which is that we must strive to bring down poverty in the world. Poverty, especially when you define it by $1.25 a day, which is a shockingly low poverty line. But what is even more shocking is that with that shockingly low poverty line, 1 billion people happen to be below that. So we have to fight for that. But number two, we have to fight for shared prosperity. And by that, we defined that for every society, there ought to be special attention paid to the bottom 40% and how that is doing. 40% is a bit of an arbitrary number, but the point is that you have to pay attention to the sharing of the pie. Subsequently, the World Bank declared this last April as one of its major goals, one of its 2 goals, so giving it a lot of salience. This has come into play. There have been statements by the economists have written. Piketty, of course, is very prominent. IMF has gone into this topic. So this is gaining some ground. So I feel pleased because I feel this ought to be discussed in a rational way. You don't want to destroy market forces when you battle this, but at the same time, you have to nurture that. One more important move that I think I can say that I've played a role. I worked with the World Bank president early when I came in to say that economic development depends a lot on getting your fiscal policy right, monetary policy right, taxation right, but it is also rooted in human psychology, in sociology, culture and norms. In the economics profession, there is a bit of a resistance to this. It's sort of giving ground to the neighboring disciplines. But very early, we pushed for this, and now we've got a World Development Report which has just come out on the behavioral and social foundations of development, and it's doing extremely well. It's very well written, and it uses a lot of methods which you yourself are familiar with. So very powerful entry into the mainstream development economics. I was actually at an event in New York City with a very prominent policymakers over there, and it's being very well received. So it's very heartening to see that economics is a big profession. You can't sort of push and nudge and change it in a huge way, but small bits of tilting, moving is possible, and I think it's being done very nicely.